The American left cannot agree on what it is, not what it wants, not what it stands for, what it is. At last count, and I'm being generous with count, you have the progressive wing, the Democratic Socialist Caucus, the DSA proper, the Indivisible movement, the classic liberals who are horrified to share a party with any of the above, the center-left institutionalists, and the moderate Democrats who'd rather lose quietly than win loudly. Guys, this is not a coalition. This is a support group with a branding problem. I'm Ryan Smith. This is Uncomfortable, where we look at the actual data and not the narrative people are selling you. Today, we're talking about the fracture inside the Democratic Party, and specifically why the word socialism is simultaneously the left's most powerful idea and its most self-defeating label. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you like what you hear in the next 9 minutes, consider hitting the subscribe. It's free. It takes 4 seconds. I'll explain why it matters at the end. Let's get into it. Here is what a March 26 poll from Third Way actually found when they surveyed 1,400 registered Democratic primary voters. 43% said liberal, 34% said moderate, 11% said progressive, 6% said socialist. 6. That's it. Now, hold that number in your head, because 6% has driven more Democratic messaging arguments than any other faction in recent memory. Not because they're more persuasive, because they're louder online, and because the other 94% keeps letting them define the terms of the debate. That same poll asked, capitalism with guardrails or socialism? 62% chose capitalism with guardrails across every ideological group, every single one. From a strategy standpoint, that is malpractice. You have a 62% majority telling you exactly what they want, and the loudest voices in the party keep offering them something else entirely. Meanwhile, a February 2026 survey from the Manhattan Institute found that more Democrats want the party to move towards the center than the further left. The findings describe the coalition that is more moderate, more internally divided, and more pragmatic than what is found across left-leaning social media. Social media is not the party. The party is not social media, but they keep acting like the same thing. And before we go further, I want to be honest about something, because this argument falls apart if I don't say it. Younger voters didn't adopt these labels in a vacuum. Wages stagnated for a decade. Housing costs doubled. Student debt became generational. Trust in institutions collapsed. Most Americans aren't sitting around debating Marxism versus capitalism in the abstract. They're trying to pay rent without feeling like they're drowning. That frustration is real. It's legitimate. And the socialist label made sense as a middle finger to the system that wasn't working. The problem isn't the frustration. The problem is that the label became the identity instead of the strategy. Let's talk about the actual data underneath the label, because here's the uncomfortable part. America's already a country that mixes market capitalism with publicly funded systems. It has for a long time. Socialism's not new, not in some abstract Scandinavian hypothetical. Right here. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, public schools, the interstate highway system, the fire department that shows up when your house is burning, the FDIC insuring your bank deposits, unemployment insurance. You're already living inside a mixed economy. You have been your whole entire life. The argument was never really about whether the government should do anything. The battle was settled in 1935. The argument is about how much and who pays and who decides. The word socialism in American politics is not a policy descriptor. It's a cultural war signal. It tells voters nothing about what you actually want to do. It just tells them which side of the tribal line you're standing on. And here's the thing. There is a genuinely powerful message sitting right there, unclaimed. A September 2025 Data for Progress poll found that 60% of voters across every major demographic agreed that the economic system is rigged in favor of corporations and the wealthy. Not left-wing voters, all voters. People in Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, North Carolina, Texas, basically saying the same thing. Corporations have too much power. Working people are getting squeezed, and nobody in Washington seems interested in stopping it. That's the message. That's the majority. And the left buries it under a word that loses them a general election before they've said a single specific thing. Politically, that's insane. Before I go further, if this conversation is useful to you, consider becoming a free subscriber. Link is in the description. Free, costs you nothing except an email address. And if you can go paid, $6 a month, $55 for the year, that goes directly back into boosting my posts and keeping this publication independent. No advertisers, no algorithm, just the work. I'm trying to get to 5,000 subscribers, and right now I'm counting on people like you to get me there. Capitalism is the villain of this story. Unbridled capitalism. Capitalism without constraint, without accountability, without any countervailing force. That's the villain. Those are different things. Markets work. Competition works. Price signals work. What doesn't work is what happens when you spend 40 years rewriting the rules. Piece by piece, through lobbying, through deregulation, through tax provisions nobody reads, until the whole system is tilted towards extraction instead of value. Here's what that looks like in practice. A company has a profitable quarter, a real one. The product is good. The workers showed up. Customers are happy. But the stock is flat. So the board cuts labor. Not because the labor isn't working, because when the quarterly profits become the only thing corporations are rewarded for, labor is always the fastest lever. The workers lose, the community around that factory loses, the CEO gets a bonus. Nobody in that story did anything illegal. Nobody twirled a mustache. The system just worked exactly as designed. This is not a conspiracy. It is a structural outcome. And that distinction matters, because you can't fix a conspiracy by voting harder, but you can fix a structure by changing the rules. The question isn't capitalism versus socialism. The question is, what rules do we put around markets so they serve the country instead of extracting from it? That's a solvable problem. It also's a unsexy one. So, which is exactly why nobody's running on it. Now, layer all of that into what's actually happening on the map right now, because this matters beyond messaging. While Democrats are arguing over labels, Republicans are reorganizing power structurally, and the window to respond is closing. As of this week, Texas, North Carolina, Missouri, Ohio, and Florida have all redrawn congressional maps under Republican control. And Issue 1, analysis projected Republicans could gain as many as 13 seats through that alone. And the Virginia Supreme Court, just days ago, struck down a heavily Democratic congressional map that Democrats spent tens of millions of dollars to get passed. Republicans are currently ahead in the redistricting war. Not dramatically. Democrats have counter-moves in New York, Colorado, Washington, and Maryland. But here's the part that should worry you, regardless of which party you prefer. This is not going to stop in November. Governors on both sides are already planning the next round of map redraws for the 2028 presidential cycle. Harvard election law researchers have noted that by 2028, most of these maps will be redrawn again, with further erosion of major minority districts following the Supreme Court's gutting of the relevant Voting Rights Act provision. A Democratic Party that is internally fractured, that cannot agree on what it is, cannot build the sustained state-level infrastructure needed to fight a redistricting war in 20 states simultaneously, you cannot gerrymander your way out of a disorganized coalition. You cannot message your way out of a structural disadvantage. Both problems require solving, at the same time, by people who have agreed on something. Right now, they haven't. Here's what I want you to take away. The Democratic base is not socialist. The data says so, clearly, repeatedly, across multiple independent polls. Capitalism is not inherently evil. The evidence for markets working, when properly constrained, is everywhere. And most Americans, when you actually talk to them, not the Twitter version of them, the actual version, are not thinking about ideology at all. They're thinking about whether they can afford the same life their parents had, whether the job pays enough, whether the rent went up again, whether the next medical bill is going to be the one that breaks something. That's the majority. That's 60% of the country saying the system is rigged, not as a radical position, but as a lived experience. And a party sitting on that majority supported message, that shared frustration, keeps blowing it by turning the argument into a vocabulary test that mobilizes opponents faster than it mobilizes its own people. The map is already being redrawn. 2028 is already being shaped, and the left is having a vocabulary debate. Again, that's uncomfortable. And if that's the way you feel, good, that's the point. Before you go, a quick ask. I'll keep it honest. If you got something out of this, please consider subscribing to Uncomfortable with Ryan Smith on my Substack. The link is below. Free takes 10 seconds. Get every piece I publish directly in your inbox. No algorithm deciding whether you see it. If you can afford it, and only if you can afford it, consider going paid. $6 a month, $55 for the year. That does one thing. Goes back into boosting posts and reaching people who haven't found this yet. I'm not running ads. I'm not taking sponsorships. Every dollar goes towards growing the audience organically. My goal is 5,000 subscribers, the number where this can self-sustain. And if $5 isn't in the budget right now, there's a buy me a coffee link in the description. Even $1 helps. Seriously. Oh, one more thing. I want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Do you think the Democratic Party can unify around economic populism without the socialism label? Or is the fracture too deep? I read every comment. I respond when I can. The best ones shape future episodes. If this episode made you think or argue, share it with one person. That's the most powerful thing you can do for an independent publication. One share beats 100 passive views. And if you're watching on video, like it. It matters more than it should, but it does matter. All right, guys, I'll see you next week.